Good morning. Thank you for coming to the session, an early one on the last day, which we appreciate. And this is about making interactive media pay. We've got a fantastic panel that I'll introduce in a little while. But I was asked by the organisers to explain why I've been asked to be the chair, because it relates to any questions that you may have at the end that you're welcome to ask me along with the rest of the panel. So I have worked in interactive media without a break for 27 years. And I've worked all over the world, which has been an absolute privilege. So a big part of my job over the years has been to get new formats, new technologies, launch new channels, new media outlets. So TV shows in Japan, North America, EMEA, all over the world, the Middle East. And excuse me. I was trying to think this morning about some of the highlights, and there have been so many. And I think it'll be interesting later to really go through how you can keep up with an evolving market. But some of the things I have been charged with over the years is I took over the IPC magazine group and was charged with increasing revenues by 30% in a 6-month period. And we managed to increase it to 35%. We did that in 4 months. We did that across all of the digital and print outlets. And we did it by refreshing the pages, the artwork, bringing in new contributors, and really just looking at price points and how we could make things pay and how we could retain our customer base and really make it a future-proofed organisation, which it has turned out to be. Another project that I worked on was bringing I'm responsible for a lot of the reality TV shows, which I apologise to people for, because I worked on the very first brief, working with ITV and BT at the time, about how we could potentially get people around the UK to vote and that we could map it to different parts of the country. And that turned into the intelligent network system, which has now been used all over the world with places like Pop Stars and American Idol and The Voice and many, many other shows. And I think the one that I was best known for, and this was something where it always says to me, don't ever give up if you think you've got a good idea, is I worked on the original format for Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and I took it to the networks 5 times, was turned down 5 times, and on the 6th time, the fabulous David Liderman at ITV said yes. I worked with Celador, and the rest is history really on that one. It went all over the world. It was one of the biggest things I've ever worked on. I just wished I'd owned some of the IP, which I learnt with age. But on that one, if I just tell you, I'm not allowed to give you the figures, but we used a premium rate inbound telephony for people to take part in the show. And we used to really struggle to cope with the push on the network. The first night we got it wrong. That's no secret. It was all over the front pages of the newspaper. We took down the emergency services in Manchester. We took down the royal palaces. We got into a lot of trouble. But when we got it right, for the intake, bearing in mind this is just to be a contestant, we made more from those phone lines than we did for having to put up and mitigate and insure for up to £1 million prize money per show. So it was an absolute juggernaut. So it's been an absolutely interesting and fantastic ride. But we've got a great panel with us this morning. So David Wainwright, who has worked in many businesses, still works in many businesses, is an investor. Like me, I think worked on some of the original kind of cool TV and participation channels and services. So everything from bingo to glamour stations to quiz TV. I did that at Bongiorno. And he's still pushing the boundaries with new blockchain technology and new formats today. Joanna Cox, who I've worked with for years in many guises. And the interesting thing about Jo is she has covered and seen things from all perspectives. So we worked together when you were a service provider, an interactive provider, and then you went client side. So you were poacher turned gamekeeper and ended up sort of being the client at Channel 5. And then is now the new general manager of the trade association AIM. And the lovely Claire, who I've also had the pleasure of working with, I would say you've pretty much stayed more on the supplier side, haven't you, on the service provider side? So I worked with Claire at VO as an aggregator, and now at Phonics. And Phonics, for me, has been an incredible journey with the team there. Seeing that company start from scratch. I think you guys are now turning over 50 million. It's incredible. And one of the things that we did was bring Phonics in to be our supplier on Children in Need at the BBC. And Children in Need alone now has over 40 interactive campaigns, all paid for in terms of the public giving money to charity. And running 40 individual campaigns is no mean feat. And I think the team are back there now, aren't they, for the launch later in the month. So I'm going to hand over to David, who's going to give us our main presentation. So thank you.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for all getting up early for this presentation. Probably had like 2 or 3 hours sleep like most of us. So I've been in this interactive space, I think for circa 10 years. I've been like a speaker on these circuits. And about 10 years ago, I predicted that interactive television would kind of dominate, that we'd all be interacting with our TVs, there'd be quiz shows, there'd be game shows, there'd be gambling, etc., etc. Yeah, I think I got it 100% right, but what I got wrong is that the screen would be a lot smaller. It would be, a portable, smartphone, an iPhone. At the time, 10 years ago, smartphones didn't exist, and everyone was talking about interactive television, whether it's the television in your living room. But there's very, very little difference, in my opinion, between a smartphone and a television. It's a screen. You can obviously broadcast to it, you can stream to it, and it's got very, very high interactivity. So I think that became the remote control. So that the smartphone became the remote control for interactivity. The genres haven't changed. The genres have always been the same. They're kind of quiz, competitions, win something, play games. Adult content is slightly restricted on mobiles. So I've been in this industry 10 years. I launched probably the UK's very first interactive television channel, which was called Friendly TV. A lot of the companies that are here today were partners on that channel. We launched interactive news, which was a complete disaster. We launched an interactive gadget show, was a disaster. And we launched I didn't launch it, but my partner Cellcast launched Babe Station late night, which is a huge success. And later we launched quizzes, which were an unbelievable success. I met a character called Joanna at Telemedia 8 years ago. And that was really the start of my kind of business, that we rolled out interactive game shows in about 30 countries. The format was there'd be a presenter, there'd be a question on the screen, either there'd be somebody in the studio or not somebody in the studio, and then we invite the audience at home to call in and participate in that show. The shows that I were involved with were generating probably about 10,000 euros per hour. ITV was running shows that were generating 700,000 pounds per hour. It was just quite incredible days. The broadcasters were scrambling to get these formats live as quick as possible. So I'm going to ask the audience to interact now. If you have a phone, if you take a picture of this image here, you'll see how easy it is to interact with television now. You need to have an iPhone. Hopefully it'll work. It worked. So that is how simple it is to interact with television now. That you can have what's called a QR code on the screen. You can have a broadcast. You can have a smartphone. It instantly recognizes that QR code. It can place a bet. And I think there's going to be a rise in kind of smart wallets. So if we had a smart wallet, it could have placed a bet on that stream. So you could run it during a film, or you could run it during a live television show. So for me, it's getting very, very exciting that the broadcasters are in a quite amazing position, and they have still very, very large audiences. and they have an audience that wants to interact, and pretty much every single viewer has a smartphone with them. So I always say that the television is the trusted device. The smartphone is the interactive, is the remote control. People tried red button, they tried remote controls. I don't really know of any app in the world that ever succeeded using the television remote control. It's quite a clunky, even watching Netflix is quite a frustrating experience. So to navigate through Netflix to actually play the movie, but obviously with Netflix, it's only 1 or 2 minutes and then you're away. So I always promote that the smartphone is the interactive device. I never really got involved in smart apps, but obviously you can create an app, put it onto the television, put it into the television's app store, and actually create interactivity that way. So if I look back at the last 10 years and think what actually changed to make kind of interactivity where it is today, obviously we know the blockbuster story that today it's dominated by Netflix. I think the way people watch television has changed. That this is how people used to watch the television. They had very, very high attention span. They're focused on the channel. They had no remote control. They had no distraction. Now that's pretty much how everybody watches TV, in that they have a device in their hand while they're watching television, and people call these devices the second screen. I think now these devices are the first screen and the television is the second screen. This is their main attention. They're texting, they're sending messages, they're sending photographs, they're interacting, they're downloading, they're probably watching another film. They're doing everything in parallel to actually watching the television. If you look at the changes in kind of society, this was cosmopolitan, now this is cosmopolitan. It's changed dramatically. I think for me, that image on the left sums up that the consumers are smarter. They don't want a skinny model on the front cover of the magazine. They realize that the Hollywood image of everything being perfect is no longer the case. These magazines are bombarding with kind of the other lover. The constantly the front page of Cosmopolitan. This is how we sold music 10 years ago. So if you wanted to buy music 10 years ago, it would cost you £4.95, and you would get a 7-second ringtone. Obviously now you pay £4.95, £9.95, and you have unlimited access to Spotify. So it's changed dramatically. The amount of revenue you could get from a ringtone, you just couldn't compete with Spotify. It's unimaginable that we used to put an advert on television and say, download this ringtone, which wasn't really music, for £3. Whereas for £9.95 or £4.95, whatever, you can get access to every single single going. So computer games. This was a computer game that I wrote in 1985, and obviously. It took like a week. The experience of getting that game onto your computer took literally about a week. You'd have to see it in the magazine. You'd have to go to the shop. You have to purchase the cassette. You have to come home. You have to load it. Even the loading would take 20 minutes. The consumers now, they just want it instantly. You can see it on television. You can download it, within seconds. That. I have children, and the concept of explaining to them that you'd go to a store and physically buy a game, it's just a different world for them. Obviously personal ads has changed dramatically in that now, Tinder, dominates it. So the kind of key message I'm saying, and then the adult industry is pretty much changed as well. So consumers now, they hate waiting. They're not interested in waiting. They want it instantly. They want it on demand. They want it. And this is social media. Yeah, we all have children, and whoever came up with the term social media, it was just genius. But it's the most kind of anti-social media you can have. So getting the attention of these people now is very, very difficult. They're very savvy. They're texting for free. The concept that you pay for an SMS is kind of pretty alien. They wouldn't pay for voting. So the genres, I think, hardly ever change. Quiz competitions, they've always worked. They always will work. Gambling has always worked. It probably always will work. Shopping, tele shopping is going to change in that if you have a smart wallet on the phone, it's going to be a very frictionless experience. You can run an advert for 30 seconds, point your phone at the screen, make a purchase. Obviously, entertainment and paid content will always work, and adult will always work. So I think when you're selling any product, any interactivity on any device, nowadays you need to build trust with the consumer. The consumers are kind of used to free content. So free content builds the trust. They download the application, they download the game. If they like it, they'll go on to pay. They're a lot more streetwise than we were 10 years ago. 10 years ago, if you put anything on television, people loved it, people were interactive with it. The kind of consumers of today are interacting on an hourly basis. As I say, freemium is where you kind of deliver the content for free and charge later. And what we never did in the old days, and I wish I did it, was build a relationship with the customer. In gambling, you have to do that. You're gambling, somebody downloads your app, start playing. It takes quite a long time before you actually get to profit for that consumer. It costs on average about £500 to acquire a gambling consumer. In the old days, that would cost you £100. So unless that consumer spends £500 with you, it's a loss-making business. So, and to get £500 from a gambling consumer is like a 2 to 3 year payback. So it's become quite a heavy investment. So in kind of summary, the consumers want it on demand. I think they prefer a subscription now as opposed to kind of paying a flat fee. I don't know if you've seen this app. Have you seen this app? So this is basically 2018's version of Call TV. That I'm not sure if you're aware that Call TV was we'd have a presenter on screen. You would call in via phone, via an SMS, and you'd win a prize. So with this game here, I'm intrigued by this game. I don't actually know how they make money. Do you know how they make money? How are they monetizing that audience? Mm-hmm. 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 Well, yeah, but it's quite an expensive production. A lot of the people that are presenters used to be presenters that work for me. I just don't understand, and it's run by News International. I just don't understand how they're monetizing that app. They have about 10,000, no, about 100,000 players. So they run this show every day for 10 minutes. People come in, they play the game, they win the prize, and they have like 100,000 players every day playing that game, and they're increasing the number of games per day. So they must see as a success, but it totally baffles me how they're monetizing that app. Yeah, maybe it's like a Tinder approach that they think version 2 of the app they'll introduce pay to win. But at the moment, they're giving away that app for free. They're giving away quite substantial prizes on a daily basis. It must be a very, very expensive operation. And their goal must be to build an audience and monetize it at a later date. But I'd be intrigued if anyone knows how they're making money. So kind of what I focused on is lotteries. I did hardcore casinos. Now I do lotteries. The advantage of the lottery is they're global. They're legal globally. Pretty much every country in the world allows a lottery show. It's quite difficult, but not impossible, to get a license to run a show. And the participation in lotteries. So this is in the US, in that the lottery is really a kind of a mass market game that people play. Like a casino, you'd expect to get sort of 10% conversion, whereas a lottery is kind of in the 80% conversion. In most countries, circa 80% of the population purchase a lottery ticket at some stage. But again, like a lottery, you have to wait. You buy your ticket, you wait a week, and you potentially win. What we're doing with partners is a lottery every 5 minutes. So every 5 minutes, there will be a lottery show. I can show you quickly if we have one. No, this is .grlive.com. So I can't find the dot on this Spanish keyboard. So this, we broadcast on the web. We partner with partners around the world. Every 3 minutes, a lottery draw is run. So we have a lottery running 24 hours a day. We sell this feed to broadcasters around the world. They can customize it, change it, etc., etc. People don't win a very large £1 million jackpot. They win a lot smaller prizes, kind of the £5,000, £10,000. But it's very repetitive. They can play it every 5 minutes. If they don't win, they can play again. They play again. So if I can talk for 1 minute 40, you'll see the actual show. I could play a video in between, actually. So, yeah, I see there's like huge opportunity now, obviously, to stream these games. You don't have to be on television. You could actually operate this game yourself globally. You could stream it. You could stream it to Facebook. If you stream on Facebook, you've got no costs of the bandwidth or the CDN, it's called. So you can very easily stream that game globally. I talked yesterday about the growth of kind of cryptocurrency. And with a cryptocurrency, you have a global billing platform. So with Facebook, you've got a global streaming platform. You have a global billing platform. So I think the next sort of 5 years in this space are going to be very, very exciting times in that you can broadcast globally and you can bill globally. There's kind of no barriers. And with cryptocurrency, the governments can't stop you making that transaction. With carrier billing and traditional billing, there's always been a barrier in each country. You need to get permission, you need to get all the payouts in all the countries, etc., etc. So have you got your tickets ready? So again, you can quite easily put a QR code on the screen. Somebody just points their phone at the screen. It's a smart wallet solution, and off it goes.
You said that you thought young consumers now particularly preferred consumer model subscription models as opposed to one-off fees. And obviously, in the past, the subscription model has created an awful lot of problems. Can you just expand on that point a bit? Because from my general understanding, I think people are quite frightened of subscription models and the consequences of that.
Yeah, for sure. I think that you are right. If you look at, so there's the draw taking place. So that draw, it happens every 5 minutes. It gets streamed around the world. People buy a ticket. So the subscription are really looking at the large services. So the large services like Netflix, Amazon Prime, Spotify. So all these kind of dominant platforms, you pay a monthly fee, it's quite minimal, and you have unlimited amount of content. I agree with you that, subscription's got a bit of a bad name. I'm sure we all subscribe to services that we don't want, use, know about. I look at my bank account and I see Experian charging me $5.95 for some credit reference service, which I've never ever used. And I think to myself, I must cancel that. It's just reminded me just now, I must cancel it. So subscriptions, getting a bit of a bad name. I think the government is cracking down and telling providers that they must remind their customers every month you must do this. So, I guess if you're selling content quickly on premium rate, then it's kind of a one-hit, buy this now, blah blah. And I think consumers got very nervous that when you press buy now, they're entering into a subscription-based service. So I think kind of transparent subscription-based services, but you have to have a very, very large offering. To compete with Netflix or Spotify is obviously quite impossible. But I'm not sure that you could sell a music track. Vimeo has this premium, you can sell videos on there, but I'm not sure how successful it is, because the consumer thinks to himself, well, $4.95, I get 10,000 movies, or $1.95, I get one movie. So for me, it's quite a tough space we're in, but equally the opportunity is a lot higher than it's ever been. Blah, blah, blah. So I'll just end with our kind of promo that so this is our kind of gambling promo that so this was Super Casino. This is the content I did for Super Casino, which used to broadcast on Channel 4 every night. Channel 5, sorry. We did Challenge Jackpot, which was on ITV. So I think if you can create an experience that's exciting, people will interact with it. You need to have very high quality content. You need to have a very sort of slick user interface. But I say, for me, I see the opportunity now is streaming it globally. You can stream it globally to an iPad, an iPhone, and you can build globally. So, I don't know if you don't want to do the questions now or later. Any questions? They'll do them later.
Oh, there we go. Hello, David.
Hi.
I'm Paul Skelman from World Telemedia. Where do you see things like Google Home and Alexa and stuff like that fitting into interacting with primarily the TV, but anything else? Is that sort of part of the plan, do you think?
Yeah, I have an Alexa in our house. I personally never use it ever, but my children use it all the time. It wakes them up. They can actually call me on it. It's quite amazing. They just say, call dad, and it will call me. You know, they're doing their homework. They will ask a question. So for them, it's just a totally natural way of interacting with the world. So yeah, Apple TV has Siri, and we have Apple TV, but they don't interact with that. They don't use that. I don't know why, but I would think, yeah, voice recognition is kind of totally the future for the next generation. I think it takes a generation. Like, you know, we all said our parents would never use the internet. You know, 20 years later, they all are on the internet. And yeah, I doubt if I will ever use voice recognition, but my children for sure. You know, they're 4 years old, 8 years old, 10 years old, and on a daily basis, you know, they call Alexa for something. So yeah, for sure, these devices, and you know, Amazon has a video-based version of it. So I think voice recognition will be very strong, but I think it takes like a generation. I'm not sure if anyone here uses Siri or Alexa, or for us, it's a gimmick. You know, for our children, it's kind of a way of life. It's, you know, why would you type something in when you can just ask Alexa for the answer? And it's quite poor at the moment, I think, Alexa. You know, the information you get back from it is quite poor. But obviously, once they can, you know, work on that, improve it, make it perfect, you know, I can see it will be a quite useful device. But yeah, I think it's a generation thing. You know, I don't think we will ever use it, no matter how good it gets. You know, the concept of talking to this little box drives us insane. And I doubt many children will call their children Alexa.
Very true. Thank you.
Right, thanks.
I'm very aware of time, and I'd really like you to be able to ask the whole panel lots of questions in the session. You do me? Thank you. So just to give you a few examples, and I'll keep them really quick, and you know, totally different range and totally different what's here right now, you know, what could be here in the future. So you've taken me down memory lane, David, on Crazy Frog, because one of my jobs was I was the lead booker for the ad slots, and I was targeted and bonused on could I book a minimum of 1,000 ads a day around the world and get that on TV screens. And this was at a time when there weren't automated booking systems. So it was all, Mark Paquette's not here because I know he's worked on a system to automate that kind of ad inventory. But I was doing it manually, and I was doing it on what space we could get. And my bonus completely relied on a minimum of 1,000 ads a day. And then we all know what happened with the Crazy Frog. And you can't imagine that happening at all now. It's got so sophisticated. But to give a couple of examples of what you could do in the future, I had the privilege of working with the BBC Research and Development team. And I have to say that was a luxury because I worked with the chief scientist and 200 scientists as a minimum on things that we could be doing down the line. And two quick examples were, we looked at how for the commercial output of the BBC, bearing in mind that people very rarely have an appointment to view anymore with linear television, we worked with the iPlayer team, and we brought in the psychologist who worked on Netflix House of Cards. And what we wanted to do was take it back to competitions and interactivity and see how we could do that. So I talked Peter Kay, a UK comedian, that his next comedy vehicle would go on iPlayer, not on traditional TV. But overlaid on that as an experiment with people, we wanted to do win items that you saw in the drama, and it was a fascinating project. So he'd be driving along in a car and you'd see another car go past him on the motorway, and it would be win now, do this, go through multiple screens, different devices, we changed the price points dynamically. It was a really, really interesting experiment. And what we worked out was that normally you'd see 0.5% to 2.5% is the normal redemption rate on people taking part from a TV-led campaign that's premium. We have got it up to 10% in the past. When we did that as a very targeted, integrated campaign, and we built the you know, the spontaneity of you never knew when there was an option to take part. The prizes got bigger. There was, you know, we'd put the winners' names on screen. It was a fascinating project done with a psychologist. Our redemption rate was 98%. So when you go from 0.5% to 98%, and we would change the price points as we went, and it was multi-device, and David and I have had in previous sessions discussion about making it frictionless. I think that's a word that's come up over and over again. And the other one was looking at TV of the future, and we built a house, and we brought a family in, and we had, your image was interesting, we had a family of 4, looking at 4 different screens in the living room with headsets, with different devices, all watching different output, playing games and everything else. But again, we work with psychologists, and we put on a traditional drama, and we got a fashion designer to pick what we knew from the autumn collection was going to be the dress that everybody would want. And we picked a member of the house to match the demographic. We plugged her vital statistics in advance, payment options, and we didn't tell them, and we just let them watch the drama. And within the 10 minutes where we placed pretty much the lead character in this dress, we said to the people in the house, if there's anything you want to do with the screen, get up and touch the screen. And the girl got up and hit the dress to see it bigger and see if it would rotate. She didn't know she then made a purchase. We would obviously tell people in the future that that was what they were doing. Did nothing else, let the drama get to the end. And then the front doorbell rang. And they said, you know, called the girl's name out. She opened the front door, and a retailer and delivery firm handed her the dress in her size, all charged for, and it was ready for her to wear the next day. And some of the stuff that's going to be coming down the line is absolutely fascinating. So I'm going to hand over now. You guys doing this together? Or are you going to go first?
I might ask Claire to interject from time to time.
Thank you.
I'd like to mirror David's thanks for coming this morning, particularly when at some points I thought that I might not make it myself. So my name's Joanna, I'm from AIM, the Association for Interactive Media and Micropayments. We are a trade association in the UK that represent the value chain that are involved in delivering content, services and payment through DCB and PRS. So those sort of people might be mobile network operators, aggregators, L1s, L2s, media owners, industry support agencies and broadcasters. And our mission is to create conditions for growth in micropayments. We want our members to really lead in bringing quality mobile payment services to the market. I've been at AIM for about 7 weeks now, maybe 8 weeks, so I'm pretty new. However, before that, I was at Channel 5, as Claire referenced, as head of interactive operations, mainly things that the audience would reach out to Channel 5 and make an active, have an active response. So it might be a competition that they'd seen on air that they then wanted to enter. It might be a vote because they did like someone or they didn't like someone, or it might be accessing content or services through an app. So anything that really reached out to the audience to get them to interact and participate with us. And that's where I'm really coming from this morning with the presentation, particularly in the sector of kind of competitions, which is a genre that I'm going to be talking to you about this morning. So on TV and radio, why do people enter competitions? The formats have been around for absolutely years. It became very, very heavily regulated about 10 years ago or so. But aside from that, formats are still standard. There are better prizes. There are obviously much better VTs now. People have got a lot smarter about how they interact with the audiences. But why do audiences choose to actually have a go? So they are aspirational. You see a VT on TV, someone on a yacht in the sun, driving a fast car, opening a suitcase of money, or you hear on the radio people screaming because they've just won £30,000. We love hearing that sort of thing. So it's aspirational. People really want to win. Obviously, it's low cost. It's a quid. It's a couple of quid. It's kind of slightly throwaway money, and it's a one-off cost. There isn't that subscription fear that David and Jarvis were referencing earlier. it's relevant. You know, if they're watching the show or they're listening to the show, they're already engaged. So slotting that in, and they're becoming much more relevant now. Slotting it in almost seamlessly has become something producers do really, really well. And sometimes you almost can't tell where the show stops and the competition slots in because they're so integrated. On TV now, you see a lot more presenters in shows representing competitions. It's become much more standard, much more kind of acceptable. And they resonate, you know, people are watching, they're seeing something they like, or they're listening and they're hearing something they like, and they have a go. It has got a low ARPU on the PSA AMR that Nick Lane presented. I've seen it a couple of times. It's only £4.20. I guess that is that kind of throwaway spend. People aren't really willing to spend an awful lot more, but they will spend sort of £4.20 to be in with a shot to win something fantastic. So if you are involved, or you're thinking about becoming involved in providing interactive services, then you'll need to think really carefully about how you maximise engagement. There are three main elements, I would say, that are needed for success in running a broadcast competition, whether that be on air, on the radio, or on TV. So first of all, you need to know whether it's going to be a skilled competition. Back in about 2011, the Gambling Commission introduced some new laws around what was a competition and what was a prize draw. Before that, there were people who were running competitions, and the question might be something like, what's the capital of England? Is it London or a banana? And that was enough. You could run that and people would enter. So the Gambling Commission said, actually, that's not skill. There's no skill involved there. So if you're not going to have a skill, then you have to have a free route of entry. Otherwise, you're running a lottery. So things got quite difficult for media owners then. All of a sudden, they had to think about, well, I can either make it skilled, but if I make it skilled, I've got to prove a level of skill. And there were all sorts of KPIs around proving that skill, such as how many people were put off from entering because the question was too difficult. I have no idea how you even begin to find out that sort of information. So if you decide to skill it, you've got that hurdle. And if you don't, you have to have a free route of entry. As soon as you put a free route of entry on a competition, people enter it for free and they stop paying, which is obviously not what the broadcasters wanted at all. So they might put a web entry on there. People go to the website, they enter for free, they don't pay. So then it moved down the route of postal entries, meaning people would send their little postcard off. It would go and get batched and counted, and if they were pulled as a winner, it would be sort of hunted down and pulled out. That, of course, means you can't turn competitions around quickly because you have to allow people time to get the postcard, pop it in the post, get delivered, and then the competition closes. And that's when revenues kind of fell off a cliff for a while, because all of a sudden that quick turnaround, that we're going to open a competition now, we're going to show a TV show, and then we're going to resolve it. And at the end, we're going to tell you who's won. And well done, Mrs. Jones from Liverpool, you've just won 10 grand. People love that. It was no longer possible unless you introduced a skilled element. Also the mechanic, how are you going to run it? How often are you going to promote it? And what entry method are you going to use? Radio stations primarily will use SMS because it's nice and quick, and they haven't got that screen for people to see and memorize numbers, so they want something that they can say and people will log it in their brain, and then they'll be able to enter all day long. And they will run every hour, radio competitions, and they will resolve very quickly. There are some going at the moment where they are very comfortable with the level of skill that they have, and so they will literally run, they'll play a couple of songs, they'll resolve it, they'll get the winner on air, and it's all good, and they are absolutely flying. Some of the TV competitions, however, have gone down a different route in that they have 090 still, PRS numbers, they have text, but then you can also go online, you can enter via PayPal, and more importantly, you can now enter via operator billing, which is going really well. You've got to think about your prize. It's not, much as we all love to win lots of money, and there is a broadcast competition at the moment where you can win £500,000 on TV, and I'm sure that's doing fantastically. Actually, it's not necessarily always bigger is better. There are some competitions where they'll give away a few £100 or a few £1,000, and the perception of having a much better chance of winning actually sometimes drives engagement. It's really about just reaching out to the consumer at that moment in time and offering them something that they think is winnable. So if you get all of these right, then consumers will start to trust what you're doing in competitions, they'll engage more, and hopefully they'll spend a little bit more money. So these days, an on-air comp might not be enough to sustain ideal revenues, which is where mobile interaction starts to come into play. Broadcasters don't often have the expertise or the resource to be able to facilitate mobile add-ons that can really maximise interaction. When I was at Channel 5, we ran a competition on the Gadget Show. Some of you may have known it, where we would give away £40,000 worth of tech, and we'd show these huge Arctic lorries rolling up at someone's house and all this gadgetry coming out, and people absolutely loved to interact. However, I was approached by Phonics, who said, actually, we can really help you maximise interactions. We can make people interact so many more times, and actually we might get to the point where you don't even need them to watch the TV to do so. So Claire, yes. Would you briefly be able to explain how that works?
Can you hear me okay? Is that working?
Yeah, he'll
yes, so as Joe was saying, what we do with that data is we essentially segregate it based not only on like the level of interaction that end user has had with that one competition, but we will look at their previous competitions, how many times they've entered in the last 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, etc., and we'll go back for 6 months. And then we basically profile those end users into, I think at one stage we had up to about 16 different pools of people from that. And then we will target those people differently in terms of the time within the competition that we text them. Like if, for example, they were a high user, so we knew that they were most likely to enter the competition, we would actually leave that until pretty much the last chance to enter, because we know that they're probably going to enter anyway. So rather than wasting time and maybe annoying them with text messages, we would wait to the end and we would just send them a message at the end and say, last chance to enter now. And obviously we target people differently, frequency. So we would push people maybe at the opening of a competition, and then again sort of halfway through if we know that they're people that don't tend to interact as much as we kind of want them to.
Thank you. And actually that SMS marketing really completely changed the way that we ran the Gadget Show competition. We started to worry much less about how many people were entering when the comp was on, which is when you traditionally see the spike in the old days.
And I think as well, like the high users, we were probably having we see up to a 60% response rate from just sending someone a message to say, enter this competition one more time. So, that's a really, really high response rate.
Yeah, and we do think that some people actually got to the point where they might not have even watched the show, because the text message would go out, this is the competition, this is the question, this is how you enter, and immediately you would see people start to enter before the show had even been on air. So it was invaluable. Something else we did was more of a sales promotion on the Gadget Show again. People who entered the competition via mobile, we would then send them a message saying, thanks for your entry this week, you get 10% off a pair of Bose headphones, and sort of send people down that route with mobile vouchering and so on. It's got a lot more sophisticated now, but it was something quite exciting when we did it then. I think there are definitely opportunities there. Slightly off-piste, if you've got them into a competition, you've marketed them, you are interacting with them on a regular basis, actually you can reach a bit further. We ended up with the Gadget Show doing live shows, big live events every year. We had a range of Gadget Show Christmas products, and we even launched the Gadget Show Insurance. So we reached even further to interact with that customer. For Big Brother, people obviously got really involved and they would vote. They were used to interacting with the show. We took that a step further. We did a Shop the House, where we had like a virtual tour, like you see on an estate agent website. You could go on, you could look around the Big Brother house, you could see the duvet cover that they had, and you click on it and you would go straight through to be able to buy one of those. That worked absolutely brilliantly. We had a sponsor for everything that was in the house. They saw a huge uptick. They actually ran out of duvets, and they had a big long waiting list for those. And we did a Furnish the House app where people could upload items. We did this in conjunction with Gumtree. Upload items that they wanted to sell or get rid of from their house, put them on the Gumtree, and the producers of Big Brother would go and buy items, and then people would see their items that they were getting rid of in the Big Brother house. That was absolutely fantastic. The consumer definitely has an appetite to interact. Once they've started interacting with you, it's important to see sort of how far you can push it, how far you can reach. So obviously, people watching TV shows has decreased. However, work that's been done with broadcasters over the years to underpin services with absolute confidence means that actually we can now move those viewers off air with very little concern over trust. So a competition offering sort of cash car holiday might not reach as many viewers on TV now, but people still want to win those prizes, and they might just not be watching. So how do we reach them? Broadcasters are accepting the fact that linear TV watching's in decline, and one broadcaster that I spoke to recently said, we are more than TV, we have to be more than TV. How do we reach that addressable audience? Well, further opportunities definitely lie here. Comps are moving online, portals, apps, and they have different payment models. So some comps are free, well, in return for data or research. Some comps will be bonus. So if you enter or you pay for a standard competition, a set number of times, you'll be offered a bonus competition. And paid for comps are now starting, as I said, to include DCB, which is working really well. So many broadcasters have got lots of online and app presence where mobile payment models can work, and indeed some broadcasters with no resource or expertise at all would really relish a white label bolt-on that they can just take and use in order to still interact with their consumers who want to enter competitions but just aren't watching the TV. So they just need to know how to do it. Oh, a quick word on charities, which is another really big opportunity for mobile interactions. I never really phoned up charity telethons. I know I probably shouldn't say that, but I never did. I would watch them, I would cry, and I would have my tissues, but I never phoned up because I didn't want to phone up. I didn't want to speak to someone. I didn't want someone to then put me in their phone book and call me back. But as soon as mobile text donations came on board, I got involved and feel, you know, a lot better for it. And there's definitely a huge place for mobile donations. I think the convenience factor and the anonymous factor here is massive. Claire tells me that £30 is hopefully ready to go soon.
Yep, so we introduced the £20 text to donate in 2016 for children in need. It was a bit of a, we were a bit worried, quite a big ask, £20. It was met with such amazing success. We now see half of revenue that comes in on these telethons from people giving £20 on text. So we are now introducing the £30, hopefully in children in need, next month. The beauty of it is obviously it's raising the average donation per user. So we were struggling in a way to compete with people that are calling up and giving, you know, £30, £40. So by introducing the £20 and now the £30, we're going to see the average amount given from, well, it jumped from £8 to £14 when we introduced 20. So hopefully introduce 30 and we'll be pushing in the 20s, which is fantastic. It's really good progress to make that over just the course of a couple of years as well.
And of course, consumers are happy because they see now that 100% of that goes to charity. The mobile networks don't keep anything, but there is still scope to make money on charity. Management fees can and should be charged. You don't want to get a free service for someone who's managing your charitable donation because you get what you pay for. Charities are absolutely willing to pay money for the service to be run properly, as of course they do, you know, to credit card providers and other payment providers. So there are opportunities there in that sector. So to conclude, I guess really, there's still a market for consumers who want to interact with their chosen media brand in a really low cost and fun way through competitions, charity donations. It does need to be really relevant and it needs to be relevant to their behaviour, not reliant on them watching or listening live. Opportunities are available around the market to those audiences to create further engagement, offering them other ways to interact and tying them into the brand further, moving them online, which can be done because of the trust that's been built up over the years. And they need trusted partners and they need people they can work with to tell them how to do it. So if you want to talk to AIM or speak to any of our members, many who are in the value chain who are offering these services to broadcasters about any collaborative opportunities, then please feel free to do so. I'm here until 2. Thank you.
I know that we are about to run out of time. Thank you very, very much. Just a couple of takeaways, and I'd say please do get in touch, and you're welcome to through me, and I can put you in touch with the panel, because we actually, I think, could have done a half-day workshop on this one. So I don't know, I'm going to pick a few things. Data analytics, without question, and Phonics are expert at it, driving those participation levels up. Lotteries, where you don't always have to have an element of skill, you don't always want an element of skill. Certain, you know, TV slots, certainly like laid back mid-morning, you do not want to be, you know, the equivalent of Mastermind. So all that kind of thing. We did a lot of research on getting prizes right, and what we found was the aspirational and then the realistic. So, for example, one of our trials was you could win one of 10 T-shirts, or you could win, a Ferrari. And people entered because they wanted the Ferrari, but they were also quite happy with their T-shirt, and then they'd enter again for the Ferrari. So, and one of the things that I found was, in terms of endorsements, if you have a success, use it to the max. You've got that already within your gift. And my quick example is, so I launched Deal or No Deal, which went crazy. And one of my winners turned out to be now the international successful recording artist and producer Naughty Boy, who now works with Lady Gaga and Beyonce and all sorts of people, Rihanna and all sorts of people. And I went and interviewed him, and he was from a comprehensive school, wanted to be a producer, had no means, kept applying for everything to get sponsorship and internships, and he came on Deal or No Deal, and he won £44,000, and he used it to go and build a shed in his parents' garden, get his first mixing desk, and the rest is history. So he ended up with a career that he wanted, but he never thought he'd have. And he is now one of my biggest ambassadors in this market, and he's my sounding board for anything like that, and how you do case studies and testimonials and give that information back. So I just wanted to ask, is there any questions from the floor, or all out of time? Okay, thank you guys very much.